Welcome to Business 360. I'm Archana Solanki and here are the headlines we're tracking this evening. Global markets miss a stride as the US Federal Reserve hikes rate by 50 basis points to a 15-year high and signals more rate hikes are on the anvil. Sensex loses nearly 900 points. Nifty barely clings on to 18,400. All sectoral indices end with losses. Poonawalla Fincorp approves the sale of its housing finance subsidiary to private equity player TPG for 3,900 crore rupees. Other Poonawalla tells CNBC-TV18 the company may use the cash to buy a fintech and could also consider a share buyback. The government looks to raise over 2,700 crore rupees by selling up to 5% in railways catering arm IRCTC via an offer for sale. Sets the floor price at 680 rupees per share. That's a 7% discount to Wednesday's closing price. The company's stock drops over 5% on the news. Home Ministry steps in to take stock of the overcrowding and chaos at Terminal 3 of Delhi Airport. Sources say the CISF will deploy additional manpower at Delhi Airport. The centre has directed implementation of a 12-point action plan at Mumbai, Bengaluru and Hyderabad airports. Air India Pilots Union's right to the airline highlights manpower crunch, leave denials, pay discrimination against Indian pilots. Among other issues, the union alleges that pilots are being punished with pay cuts on the months that they fall sick, away leave or undergo training. The Supreme Court says a public servant can be convicted of corruption based on circumstantial evidence in the absence of direct oral or documentary proof. Adds that the absence of evidence by a complainant due to turning hostile or death is not enough to acquit. China begins to push for large-scale vaccination as the retreat from zero-COVID policy turns messy. A study shows China's death toll due to COVID could cross 1 million. Reports say doctors and nurses told to keep working even when infected as the virus rips through the country. Elon Musk sells Tesla shares for another $3.6 billion even as the stock drops to two-year lows. This latest sale puts this total share sale value at close to $40 billion. This year, the move raises concerns that Musk is diverting his money and focus from Tesla to Twitter. The food regulator asked companies to back up their claims on levels of fat, sugar, cholesterol, etc. on packaging. Also makes it compulsory for food companies to highlight disclaimers for fancy adjectives prominently in front of the pack. With 2 lakh tech workers in the United States losing their jobs so far, thousands of Indians are at the risk of being deported. We speak to some H-1B visa holders to see how they are coping with the situation. All right, again, the commentary from the US Fed rattled markets across the world, and India was no exception. The Wall Street marked its biggest single-day fall in 2 months. Sensex lost nearly 900 points and the Nifty lost about 250 points. All sectoral indices ended in the red, all thanks to a last-hour sell-off. 44 out of 50 Nifty stocks ended with losses. Prashant Nair is here with the market wrap.
Pronounced selling pressure today and the market ending at the low point on the Nifty and the Bank Nifty. Generally, the impulse for the last so many weeks has been the dip gets bought sooner rather than later in the first couple hours of trade. But today, through the course of the day, the market kept going lower. Banks saw the similar kind of structure. Banks, by the way, have been the stronger part of the market. No such luck today. PSU banks, 10 days in a row, they've gone up, but today they saw losses. Other large sectors, IT, metals and real estate were some of the others. On the large cap, you had cuts coming through in tech names like Tech Mahindra and Infosys, bank names, the HDFC twins, Titan was down, iShares was one of the top losers as well. Broader markets, the advance decline, which was in favor of advances, initially flipped completely 2:1 in favor of declines by close. IRCTC, the PSU names were down, Bank of Baroda, Bank of India, Ambuja Cements lost quite a bit. Poonawalla Fincorp, there's a deal there. We spoke with the management. It pulled back. J&K Bank, Campus, G-Shipping. G-Shipping has been a huge outperformer and it sort of gave up some of those gains. There were gainers in the PSU bank space as well, but at the bottom rung of the PSU bank ladder, UCO Bank, Indian Overseas Bank were strongly up. Piramal Enterprises was up. That's been an underperformer. Fact, we had the management with us earlier today. GIC RE, huge underperformer since listing. That was up. GSFC and a bunch of others as well. As I said, the markets have ended at the low point of the day, both the Nifty and the Bank Nifty. And I think everyone will look to the US session, because last night's session in equities and yields on the dollar did not reflect how hawkish the Fed was. Will we see a more pronounced reaction out of the US today? Or, as we have seen, I mean, these moves don't last. I think that will set the course for us near term when we return.
All right, thank you, Prashant, for that. Moving on, Petroleum Minister Hardeep Puri told Parliament today that 6 states, all non-BJP ruled, have not reduced VAT on petroleum products, leading to higher petrol and diesel prices in those states. Puri also said that currently petrol prices in India are one of the lowest, added that oil PSUs suffered losses over 27,000 crore rupees due to high crude prices internationally.
The central government, in order to maintain the price at the bunk at a reasonable level, reduced the excise duty on 2 occasions, in November 2021 and May of 2022. Increase of petrol only at 2%, while internationally it went up by a very large percent, was because the OMCs, as good corporate citizens, took a loss. These 3 companies, IOCL, BPCL and HPCL, now in the H1 of the further year, they have booked a combined loss of 27,276 crore.
Moving on, IRCTC shares nosedived after the government announced that it's planning to sell up to 5% stake in Indian Railway Catering and Tourism Corporation. The floor price has been fixed at 680 rupees a share. This is at an over 7% discount to yesterday's closing price. Mangalam joins us with more details. Over to you.
That's correct. So the reason why IRCTC was under pressure in today's trading session, there were 2 of them. One was that there's fear of supply coming in from the government, so that's oversupply that takes the stock price lower. And secondly, the sharp discount that the government has offered for this offer for sale, which is over 7%, 7.5% to be precise, versus yesterday's closing price. So to put things into perspective, the government will sell about 2.5% stake in the company, which is about 7.5% discount to the previous close price at 680 odd rupees. And were this to see an oversubscription, they also have an option to go ahead and sell an additional 2.5% stake as well. The government holds about 67.4% stake in the company. So, in totality, they will sell about 5% or offload 5% of their stake in the company as well. Importantly, a lot of street analysts also believe that the government will eventually hold just about 51% stake. So with this OFS, we also see an overhang of some further supply coming in the next few years on IRCTC.
Right, thank you, Mangalam, for that. Moving on, Poonawalla Fincorp has approved the sale of its housing finance subsidiary to private equity player TPG for 3,900 crore rupees. In a conversation with CNBC-TV18, Adar Poonawalla, the chairman of the Poonawalla Fincorp, said that the company may use the cash to buy a fintech and also could consider a share buyback.
We're targeting annualized, growing at between 30 to 40%, because we don't want to grow any faster than that in Fincorp, because, then you're not really taking care of all the things that you need to vet, the loans and the kind of assets that you're building. Look, there was no rush really to sell it. In fact, we weren't putting Poonawalla Housing on the market. It was just that this offer came about, and we thought that, look, this is a great way to encash and bring in some more cash at the Fincorp level, which enhances the net worth, and we'll see what to do with that cash. It could be used, for making some small fintech acquisitions. It could be used to returning, some money to the shareholders with the company buyback.
Abhishek Kothari joins us with the analysis of the deal. Over to you.
The multiple that Poonawalla Housing Finance has taken is almost near to where the others are trading, except for, Aavas Finance or Aptus, because they are strong in terms of their return ratios. To begin with, the ROA profile that Mr. Poonawalla spoke about, for Poonawalla Housing Finance Company, that's on the lower side when you compare to peers. So the peers like Home First Finance has a 3.8% ROA, Aavas Finance has 3.4%, Aptus Value has about 8.6%, 2.7, while Poonawalla Housing Finance has an ROA profile of just 2.4%, which is in line with Repco Home Finance. So the spread or net interest margin profile of the HFC is also the weakest amongst peers. I just calculated a back on the envelope calculation for reference. It is at about 7.8% in terms of the spreads, while you are seeing spread of Awas Finance being at 8.2%, and for Aptus it is more than 9%. So the spread is also on the lower side when compared to peers. The book has not been seasoned because you are seeing the growth coming in only last few quarters, let's say 4 to 5 quarters, which is why the operating efficiency is on the lower side. So by that I mean the cost to income ratio when you compare to peers is on the higher side. For Poonawalla Finance it's north of 54%, while for the rest of the field it's anywhere between 20% to 45% in terms of cost to income ratio. So valuation, the price to book value multiple shows that it's not too far away from the listed peers. However, despite the book not being seasoned and it's not seeing a complete business cycle of about 3 to 4 years that an HFC sees, despite that the valuation are slightly on the higher side. Back to you.
All right, moving on. VRL logistics promoter Vijay Sankeshwar offloaded more than 5% stake in the company for over 273 crore rupees via an open market transaction. After the transaction, his stake in the company will reduce to a little over 28%. And Newsbreak confirmed the 68.2 lakh shares of KFC and Pizza Hut operators Sapphire Foods, amounting to close to about 10.7% equity changed hands via block deal. Promoter groups and a private equity fund offloaded some of their stake. The stock jumped over 5% in trade. And Life Sciences commercialization company, I beg your pardon, Indigenous files DRHP for 3,200 crore rupee IPO. The IPO is likely to be a mix of fresh issue of about 950 crore rupees and the remaining as an offer for sale. According to a Bloomberg report, the Rice Exporter Association is planning to urge the government to remove curbs on rice exports. The association will seek scrapping of 20% tax on white rice exports. India, which accounts for 40% of world's rice exports, had banned the exports of broken rice in September to contain the surge in domestic prices. The Home Ministry steps in to take stock of the overcrowding and chaos at Terminal 3 of Delhi Airport. Sources say CISF will deploy additional manpower at Delhi Airport. The centre has directed implementation of a 12-point action plan at Mumbai, Bengaluru and Hyderabad airports. Two Air India pilots unions have written to the airline red flagging the shortage of pilots and other key challenges they are facing. This includes long work hours, which in turn raise the question of passenger safety, pay cuts and deterioration of work-life balance. Madiha Mujawar joins us with more details. Madiha, what are the concerns that have been highlighted by the pilots?
The letter you mentioned is written by two pilot unions of Air India, the Indian Pilots Guild and Indian Commercial Pilots Association. The pilots have alleged inconsideration to their grievances by the airline management, despite they supporting airlines' expansion plans. The letter alleges that pilots have been made to fly for over 90 hours per month on all fleets, especially on Boeing 777s. This, they claim, exceeds the industry norm of 70 hours of flying per month, as any more flying hours after this are counted as overtime. The letter also talks about crew shortage, saying that planned roster cannot be maintained due to shortage of pilots and non-availability of standby pilots. They allege that in order to manage the planned roster, regulatory flight duty time limit of pilots may also have been undermined. The pilots have also alleged that Air India management has been denying and cancelling leaves to pilots. The letter claims that they are not paid on the months that they fall sick, avail leave, or are undergoing training to fly a different aircraft. The pilots also allege that Air India is hiring expat pilots at a salary that is 80% higher than the current long-serving domestic pilots. This even as their salaries haven't been restored to the pre-COVID pay structure. The pilots have noted they can no longer sacrifice the quality of their life, work-life balance and their long-term health.
All right, thank you, Madiha, for that. That note, we'll slip into a short break. When we return, we'll get you the latest. The food regulator has asked companies to back up their claims on the levels of sugar, fat and cholesterol on packaging. More details when we return. Stay tuned. Welcome back. The food regulator has asked FMCG companies to back up their claims on their food packaging. The regulator has also made it compulsory for food companies to highlight disclaimers for adjectives like natural and fresh prominently in the front of the pack. Shilpa Ranipeta joins us with the details. Shilpa, this is a very important development. What does it mean for the food companies and essentially the consumers?
Well, consumers will now have to start paying closer attention to the claims that are made on food products and their labels. Now, the Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, or the FSSAI, has issued a set of amendments to the advertising and claims on food products. Now, this is called the Food Safety and Standards Advertising and Claims Second Amendment Regulations of 2022. And these new regulations mandate companies to make clearer disclosures on food packets, and they hold them responsible for the advertisements and the claims that they make on labels. Now, it has issued a set of conditions for claims like fat-free, low sugar, protein high, etc., source of fiber, among others. Now, for example, a food can be called low fat only if it contains 3 grams or less of fat per 100 grams of solid foods, and fat-free only if that's less than 0.5 grams per 100 grams. Similarly, it's only low sugar if it's 5 grams or less of per sugar per 100 grams of solid. Now, similar conditions are also given for a whole host of other nutrients as well, like protein, for example. There's also for cholesterols, vitamins, dietary fiber, gluten, etc. Now, for claims like no added salt, now that can be made only if the food item and its ingredients have no sodium salts or its substitutes, or similarly for no additives claim as well, there are similar regulations. Now, the regulations also look at the limit of adjectives like natural, fresh, pure, etc. that are part of trademarks and brand names. For example, in the case of Dabur homemade ginger garlic paste, right? Now, this claim that homemade is only a trade pack and that does not represent its true nature. Now, that will have to be prominently displayed on the front of the pack and in a specified font size. Now, if the food item claims to reduce the health risk of a disease or reduce disease, now companies for that will have to specify how much of that food has to be consumed per day for that claim to hold true. Now, there are also other disclosures like with respect to volumes of nutrients and micronutrients that are present in food items. Now, these regulations came into effect on the 13th of December and may require food companies to now have to rework their packaging completely to comply with these new regulations, and they have 30 days to do this and seek clarifications.
Right. Thank you, Shilpa. Crucial piece of information there. We'll have to see how this pans out for both consumers and food companies. Moving on, at least 40 people have lost their lives after allegedly consuming spurious alcohol in Bihar's Saran district. Chief Minister Nitish Kumar expressed his grief over the deaths, reiterating the state's liquor ban and asking people to refrain from drinking alcohol. BJP workers staged a protest against the Bihar government over its failure to impose a ban on liquor in the state. The Supreme Court says a public servant can be convicted of corruption based on circumstantial evidence in the absence of direct oral or documentary proof. Adds that the absence of evidence by a complainant due to turning hostile or death is not enough to acquit. Setback for fugitive businessman Nirav Modi. He's lost a bid to take his fight against extradition to India to UK Supreme Court. Nirav Modi faces charges of fraud and money laundering for his alleged involvement in the Punjab National Bank scam. In international news, Elon Musk sells Tesla shares for another $3.6 billion, even as the stock drops to 2-year lows. This latest sale puts his total share sale value at close to $40 billion this year. The move raises concerns that Musk is diverting his money and focus from Tesla to Twitter. China begins to push for large-scale vaccination as the retreat from zero-COVID policy turns messy. A study shows China's death toll due to COVID could cross 1 million. Reports say doctors and nurses told to keep working even when infected as the virus rips through the population. Thousands of Indians are at the risk of being deported from the US. That's because they are among over 2 lakh tech workers who have lost their jobs this year. CNBC-TV18's Kiran Khatri finds out more about how many of them are coping with the situation.
60 calendar days. That's the window that laid-off H-1B visa holders in the US have to find a new employer to sponsor their visa. Failure will mean they have to leave America. A large number of these are Indians whose green card applications are pending with US authorities.
We're looking at about 70 to 80K. Within that 70 to 80K, if you look at the average H-1B percentage within these companies, in tech companies, they're typically 5 to 15%. And that comes out to somewhere around 4 to 12K that are in the US on an H-1B affected by these layoffs. And because of the green card backlogs, most of those 4 to 12K are probably Indians on an H-1B employed in the US.
Some of these H-1B holders who shared their stories with CNBC-TV18 said the job hunt has been challenging, and not just because of the narrow window.
A lot of companies do not want to even interview candidates who are on H-1B. And then even those candidates, even those companies that want to interview, if you know, it takes a while for the interview process to be completed, as some companies take like 2 weeks to just like have interview with the first round, and then they talk about other rounds. So this process by itself can take 4 to 6 weeks.
However, a US embassy spokesperson told CNBC-TV18, and I quote, "We continue to see high interest from US companies in employing Indian workers through the H-1B program," end of quote. Some companies which have had to lay off employees have been trying to help. A 27-year-old Indian who was laid off by real estate tech company Compass told CNBC-TV18 on the condition of anonymity, and I quote, "My company offered me a 2-month severance package. Instead of giving me a lump sum amount, they said they will keep me on the payroll for 2 months, even though I won't be an employee anymore. So my 60-day period began after that period ended," end of quote. Immigration lawyers say one option these visa holders can study is changing their H-1B visa to a visitor visa, which will give them 6 months to find a job and reapply for an H-1B visa. But the rules governing such changes are complex. A few also say it's time America reviewed these visa rules. They added that such rigid rules may prove detrimental to the US economy.
What America doesn't realize is that these people are sick of unwelcoming US immigration policies that are so old and need to be changed. It's going to impact American economics because the brain drain that America attracted the best and the brightest from all over the world and stayed at the forefront of innovation in the world, that's no longer going to apply anymore when people don't want to come here.
But no one is holding their breath, because petitions in the past to increase the window to 180 days have not had much success. Many H-1B visa holders are now bracing for the eventuality of returning to India. But again, there is no guarantee they will find a job. According to the Naukri JobSpeak Index report, IT sector hiring was down by 18% year-on-year in October. Even India's startup ecosystem may not be a viable option. From Byju's to Unacademy to Oyo, Indian tech startups have also been handing out pink slips. In Mumbai with Kiran Khatri, Arundhati Ramanan.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Business 360. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned.